I paid for everything, but at the wedding check-in, my badge said Invisible Grandma. Those words hit me like a slap in the face as I stood there in front of the check-in table. The wedding I had planned for months, the one where I had poured every bit of my savings, was now mocking me. I had given everything to make this day special for my granddaughter, believing it was a way to solidify my place in the family. Yet here I was, being erased from the very event I funded. I could feel my heart sink as the young woman handed me a badge that barely even looked like mine, labeled with Invisible Grandma. I stood there for a moment, the hurt seeping in, but I said nothing. I couldn't. Not then, not in front of everyone. The sounds of laughter and chatter echoed in the background, but all I could hear was the sharp sting of that label. I tried to brush it off. It was just a mistake, right? A silly mistake. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. This wasn't the first time I had been sidelined, not the first time I felt like I didn't belong anymore. This wedding was supposed to be a celebration of family, but to me, it felt like a cruel joke. I watched as people walked by, completely oblivious to the quiet devastation unfolding right in front of them. I had spent years making sure my children, my grandchildren, felt loved, supported, and cherished. But when it came time to show me the same, it seemed that I was no longer needed. I tried to smile. I always smiled. I had spent my whole life putting others before me, keeping the peace, doing the right thing. But on that day, something inside me cracked. Something I couldn't ignore anymore. As I stood there, holding my badge, my heart heavy with the realization that this was no longer my family, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. I stood there in the middle of the grand ballroom, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The music played softly in the background, and the laughter of guests filled the air, but none of it seemed to reach me. The world around me felt distant, like I was watching everything through a foggy window. It was supposed to be a joyful occasion, a celebration of family, but instead, it felt like a cruel reminder of how far I had fallen from their lives. I could see my granddaughter, Emma, laughing with her friends, completely unaware of the pain I was carrying. Her bright smile was the reason I had put everything into making this day perfect for her. And yet, here I was, standing at the edge of the event, invisible to everyone. I could feel the sting of the label on my chest, Invisible Grandma, as if it was permanently etched into my identity. The weight of it pressed on my shoulders, but I refused to let it show. I couldn't let them see how much it hurt. I had spent years putting my family first, sacrificing my own needs, my own desires, just to make sure they had what they needed. I thought that was what family was supposed to be about. But today, I felt like nothing more than a stranger in my own bloodline. I glanced around the room, my eyes searching for a familiar face, someone who would acknowledge my presence. But no one seemed to notice me. They were too busy enjoying the night, too busy with their own lives. Even my son, Robert, didn't look my way. He was too caught up in the moment, too wrapped up in his new family to remember the woman who had raised him. I swallowed the lump in my throat and walked to the back of the room, away from the crowd. The laughter and chatter grew quieter the farther I moved. I found a corner by the window and looked out at the night sky. The stars twinkled in the distance, far away and unreachable, much like the family I had tried so hard to hold together. I thought about how it had all started. I had been so proud of them, so proud of my children, of my grandchildren. I had always believed that the family was the one thing that would never change. But now, everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers. The tears threatened to fall, but I didn't let them. I couldn't let them see me break down. I had to keep my composure, for my own dignity, for my own pride. I turned away from the window and walked back toward the ballroom. As I passed by the table where I had checked in, I saw the same young woman who had handed me the badge earlier. She smiled at me, but it was a smile that felt empty, as if she didn't even see me. She didn't know the truth. She didn't know what it had cost me to be here, to make this day possible. I straightened my back and walked past her, holding my head high, though inside, I felt like I was breaking into pieces. I wasn't going to let them see me fall apart. Not today. Not ever. I walked into the grand ballroom once again, the same place where I had been made to feel invisible just hours earlier. The laughter, the music, the clinking of glasses, it all felt so distant now, like a world that didn't include me. I could see the excitement on everyone's faces, the joy in the air, but it was as if I was walking in the middle of a dream where I was fading away, unseen, unheard. I wanted to turn around, walk out, and never look back, but something inside me stopped me. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the realization that I had spent too many years sacrificing, too many years caring for this family, to just walk away without a fight. My eyes scanned the room, lingering on the faces of my children, my grandchildren, my son Robert. He was standing with his wife, their arms wrapped around each other, laughing, as if the world was perfect, as if nothing had ever gone wrong. I wanted to walk up to them, demand an explanation, ask them why they were treating me like this, but I knew that would only cause more pain. They would never understand. They would never see things from my perspective. As I moved through the crowd, I could feel the eyes of the guests on me. Some glanced quickly, others avoided looking at me altogether, but none of them offered any comfort. None of them seemed to care that I was the one who had made this day possible, who had put every last dime into ensuring that my granddaughter's wedding went off without a hitch. I had done it because I loved them, because I wanted them to have the best, to be happy, and this was how they repaid me. I felt the lump in my throat grow, but I forced myself to swallow it down. No tears. Not here, not now. I was done being their emotional punching bag. I had spent years holding this family together, keeping the peace, smoothing over the cracks. I had been there for every birthday, every holiday, every important moment. But in return, all I got was this coldness, this disregard. I turned my attention back to my granddaughter, Emma. She was dancing, her eyes sparkling with excitement, completely unaware of the hurt that had built up inside me. I had wanted to see her smile today, to watch her make memories, to feel like I was part of something important in her life. But now, I was nothing more than a shadow in the background. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat and stepped toward the side of the room, away from the crowd. I needed a moment to gather myself before I did something I would regret. As I stood there, leaning against the wall, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. I didn't have to look to know it was my son, Robert. He stopped beside me, his presence a silent reminder of everything I had done for him, everything I had sacrificed. But when I turned to face him, there was no warmth in his eyes, no recognition of the love I had given him. "Are you enjoying the wedding, Mom?" he asked, his voice flat. I nodded, forcing a smile, but I couldn't speak. What could I say? The truth? That I was dying inside, feeling like a stranger in my own family? He didn't need to hear that. Not now. Not when he was so wrapped up in his own life. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just nodded again and turned away, walking toward the exit. As I reached the door, I took one last look at the ballroom. The place where I had spent so much of my life building memories, only to be cast aside when it mattered most. My heart ached, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let them see how much it hurt. Not anymore. As I stepped outside the ballroom, the cold air hit me like a wave. It wasn't the sharp, biting cold of winter, but a chill that seemed to seep deep into my bones. The kind of cold that comes from within, from a heart broken and forgotten. I stood there for a moment, feeling the emptiness around me. The wedding had been a dream I worked so hard to create, a dream that had shattered in the most unexpected way. I thought I had done the right thing. I thought they would appreciate it. But now, all I felt was the weight of everything I had given up for them. I tried to push the thoughts away, to focus on something else, anything else, but I couldn't. I had given everything to this family. I had worked long hours, sacrificed my own happiness, my own comfort, just to see them smile. My children, my grandchildren, they were my life, my purpose. But now, they barely acknowledged me. I thought back to the moments when I had raised my children, the sacrifices I had made, the long nights I had stayed awake, worrying about their futures. I had done it all with love, with no expectation of anything in return. But now, after all these years, after all the love I had poured into them, this was how they repaid me. I thought about Robert, my son. I had given him everything I had, supported him when he needed it, helped him build his life. But now he barely looked at me. The connection we once shared had faded, replaced by the cold indifference that now filled the space between us. I remembered the times when he was a little boy, how he would run into my arms after school, how he would tell me everything, no matter how small. Those days felt so far away now. I missed him. I missed the boy who used to call me his best friend. But now, he had his own life, his own family, and I was just a distant memory. And then there was Emma, my sweet granddaughter. She was the one who had been the light in my life for so long. I had watched her grow up, and I had always thought that no matter what happened, she would remember me. But now, I was just another face in the crowd. I wasn't even a part of her special day. The wedding that was supposed to celebrate her, celebrate family, had become a reminder of how easily I had been forgotten. I turned and walked back toward the parking lot, the heels of my shoes clicking on the pavement with each step. I didn't look back. I couldn't. There was nothing left for me there. I was done trying to hold on, done trying to be something I wasn't. I had spent too many years chasing after people who didn't even care enough to notice. It was time for me to let go. As I reached my car, I paused for a moment. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the peace I had hoped for, the peace that comes from being surrounded by family, by love. It was the peace that comes from realizing that I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I had given enough, and now it was time to focus on myself. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away. The road ahead was long, and I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was heading in the right direction. I didn't need them. I had myself. The days that followed were quiet, almost painfully so. I had spent so much time trying to keep everything together for my family. But now, for the first time in years, I was alone. I didn't mind the silence, though. It felt like a relief. A chance to breathe without the weight of expectations pressing down on me. I spent my mornings sitting by the window, watching the world go by, feeling the sun warm my skin, and just letting myself exist without the need to be anything for anyone else. I thought about the wedding, about everything that had happened. The hurt was still there, lingering beneath the surface, but it wasn't the sharp pain it had been. It was more of a dull ache now, one that I could almost ignore if I tried hard enough. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had sacrificed, not just for the wedding, but for all the years I had spent trying to make my family happy. It was always about them, what they needed, what they wanted. But in the end, I was left with nothing but the empty spaces they had left behind. One evening, I was sitting on the porch, sipping a cup of tea, when my phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting to see a message from one of the few people I still spoke to. But it wasn't. It was a text from my son, Robert. "Mom, I know things haven't been easy. I want to talk. Can we meet?" I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to decide what to do. A part of me wanted to ignore it. After all, what was there left to say? But another part of me, the part that had loved him unconditionally for so many years, felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe he was finally realizing the truth. I texted back, agreeing to meet him the next day at the park. When I arrived, I saw him sitting on a bench, his head down. He didn't look up until I sat beside him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Robert broke the silence. "Mom, I've been a terrible son. I don't even know where to begin. I've made so many mistakes, and I've hurt you so much." His voice was quiet, filled with guilt, and for the first time in a long while, I could see the boy I had once raised. The boy who had once looked at me with love and admiration. I took a deep breath, not sure if I should speak or let him continue. But I had to know, had he really changed, or was this just another empty apology? "Robert," I said softly, "I've spent my life putting this family first. I've given everything I had to make sure you were happy, that you had everything you needed. But when I needed you the most, when I needed to be seen, you were nowhere to be found." He looked at me, his eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. But then I remembered everything that had led up to this moment, everything I had endured. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered again, and this time, I could see that he meant it. But I couldn't bring myself to forgive him, not yet. It wasn't that I didn't want to. It wasn't that I didn't love him. It was that I had spent so much of my life giving, and now it was time for me to take back what was mine. "I need time," I told him. "I need time to heal. I need time to figure out who I am without you and the rest of the family. I've spent so many years lost in all of you that I forgot to find myself." He nodded, tears still in his eyes. "I understand, Mom. I'll wait. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." I didn't know if he could make things right, but I knew that I had to make things right for me. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother, the perfect anything. I was just me, and I had no idea what the future held, but I was finally ready to find out. It had been a few weeks since my meeting with Robert, and while I appreciated his apology, something inside me told me that I wasn't ready to let go of all the hurt. I had been thinking about everything he said, about how he seemed to finally understand the weight of his actions, but I also realized that I was still the same person I had always been, the one who gave, who sacrificed, who quietly endured. It was time for me to break free from that. I couldn't keep waiting around for others to fix things for me. I had spent so much of my life expecting others to come through for me, but the truth was, I had to be the one to make the change. I had to learn how to stand up for myself, to stop putting everyone else's needs above my own. I started with small things, taking a walk every morning, sitting outside in the garden, feeling the sun on my face without rushing off to do something for someone else. I hadn't realized how much I had missed the simple joy of just being with myself. Slowly, I started reclaiming my space. I picked up old hobbies I had abandoned, things that had once made me happy but had been forgotten over the years. I spent more time reading, journaling, even trying my hand at painting again. It felt good to have something that was just mine, something that didn't involve pleasing anyone or meeting anyone's expectations. One day, as I sat in my favorite chair by the window, I received a call from Emma. It was the first time she had reached out to me since the wedding, and I could feel a flutter of hope rise in my chest. Maybe things were starting to change. "Grandma, I've been thinking about you," she said, her voice soft and sincere. "I know I haven't been the best at keeping in touch, but I've missed you. I wanted to ask if you'd like to come over this weekend. We're having a family get-together, and I'd love for you to be there." My heart warmed at her words. I hadn't expected this. After everything that had happened, I had thought I was completely out of their lives. But hearing Emma's voice, hearing her ask me to be part of their life again, it felt like a small miracle. "I'd love to, sweetie," I replied, my voice a little shaky. "Thank you for thinking of me." That evening, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, wondering who I had become. I was no longer the woman who gave up everything for everyone else. I was someone who was learning to put herself first, someone who had learned the hard way that self-worth didn't come from other people's approval. When I walked into Emma's house that weekend, it was different. The warmth in the air was real, not just the kind of warmth that was forced or expected. My family was there, yes, but I felt a shift. I felt like I had come back into the fold not because they needed me, but because I had learned to stand my ground and make space for myself. Emma ran over to hug me when she saw me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I truly belonged. The weight I had carried for so long started to lift, and I realized that while things may never be the same as they once were, they didn't need to be. I had learned something more valuable than any family gathering or approval could give me. I had learned how to reclaim my own voice. I wasn't invisible anymore. It was weeks after the family gathering, and I had begun to realize that nothing would be the same again. I was no longer the person I had been, constantly giving, constantly waiting for a thank you that never came. I was learning how to live for myself, and the more I focused on my own needs, the more I understood just how much I had neglected my own happiness. I had spent years pouring my heart into a family that didn't seem to care, but now, I was beginning to care for myself in ways I had never imagined. I woke up one morning feeling lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I had spent so much time wondering if I had done something wrong, if I had been too much, too giving, too caring. But now I understood that it wasn't me who had failed. It was them. I wasn't responsible for their neglect, their indifference, and certainly not for their mistakes. I was responsible for myself. And that was the most important lesson I had learned. My mornings had become my time to reflect, my time to breathe. I started taking walks again, the kind I hadn't taken in years. The air felt fresh, and the sun warmed my face as I walked through the park, just being with myself. I remembered how I used to walk with Robert when he was young, how we would talk about everything and nothing. I used to think those moments would last forever. But life had a way of changing things, didn't it? The park had always been a place of peace for me, but now it was a place where I could reflect on what I had lost and what I had found. I had found a new version of myself, someone stronger, someone who didn't need approval or validation from anyone. I didn't need to keep proving my worth to anyone. I had value simply because I existed. One day, as I sat on a bench in the park, my phone rang. I wasn't expecting any calls, but when I saw that it was Emma, my heart skipped a beat. It had been a while since we had spoken, and the thought of hearing from her brought a mix of emotions. I picked up the phone, feeling the warmth of the sun on my back as I said, "Hello." "Grandma." Emma's voice came through, soft but steady. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I'm really sorry about everything. I know I haven't been the best granddaughter. I want to make things right. Can we talk? I paused for a moment, feeling a lump form in my throat. It was all I had wanted, to be heard, to be seen, to be loved. Of course, sweetie, I said, my voice shaking a little. We can talk. I've missed you. We agreed to meet the next day. I wasn't sure what the conversation would bring, but I was ready. I had already learned that forgiveness wasn't just about them. It was about me, too. I couldn't move forward if I carried all the bitterness, all the hurt, all the past with me. When I met Emma the next day, there was a tenderness between us, something unspoken but deep. She had grown, and I could see that she was genuinely trying. She apologized, not just for what had happened at the wedding, but for not being there for me in the way I needed. She admitted that she hadn't understood the depth of my pain. I just want you to know that I see you now, Grandma, she said. And I'm so sorry for everything I didn't do. I don't want to lose you. I smiled at her, feeling a warmth in my chest. Maybe things wouldn't go back to the way they were, but that was okay. We couldn't erase the past, but we could build a new future. I realized then that I had been waiting for them to change, to fix everything. But the truth was, it was me who had to change first. I had to let go of the old hurt, the old expectations, and start living for myself. I wasn't just a mother, a grandmother, or a wife. I was Margaret. And Margaret deserved to be happy, to be valued, to be seen. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. Weeks passed, and the sense of change within me continued to grow. I spent more time on myself, nurturing the parts of me that had been neglected for so long. It wasn't easy, but it felt necessary. I had been so focused on others for years that I had forgotten what it meant to focus on me. The days felt quieter now, not empty, but peaceful. I woke up each morning without the pressure of obligations, the constant reminders of family expectations weighing on me. I could hear the birds outside my window, feel the warmth of the morning sun on my skin, and I realized that I was finally breathing again. I wasn't alone. I had myself. I had my memories, my experiences, and the strength that had always been there, hidden beneath layers of worry and self-doubt. One day, I decided to visit the park again, a place that had become a symbol of my journey towards self-discovery. As I walked along the familiar path, I noticed the changes around me. The flowers had bloomed, the trees had grown taller, and the sky seemed clearer. It felt like everything was moving forward, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was too. I sat down on the same bench where I had sat before, the one that had become a place of reflection for me. I closed my eyes, taking in the stillness, the peace. I had never realized how much I had missed this feeling, the feeling of being present, of being content with just being. And then, out of nowhere, I heard a voice. It was soft at first, and when I opened my eyes, I saw Robert standing there. His face was different now, softer, as if the weight of the past had finally caught up with him. Mom, he said, his voice filled with sincerity, I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us. About what I did. And I want to say I'm sorry, truly sorry. I can't change the past, but I want to make things right. I looked at him, the son I had raised, the one who had been lost to me for so long. He was standing before me, vulnerable, and for the first time in years, I saw the man he had become, not the boy I had hoped would always stay close. I know, Robert, I replied softly, I know. I had spent so many years waiting for this moment, for him to realize what he had done, for him to understand the hurt he had caused. But now, in that moment, I realized I no longer needed to wait for closure. I had already found it within myself. I had already forgiven him, not because he had asked, but because I had learned to. Let go of the past. I don't expect everything to be fixed overnight, I continued, my voice steady. But I'm willing to try. For us. For what we still have. Robert nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. We didn't need to say much more. The air between us was no longer filled with tension, no longer weighed down by the past. It was the beginning of something new, something we both needed. We sat there together for a while, just talking, catching up on life, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was truly seen. Not as a mother, not as a grandmother, but as a woman, as Margaret. And that was enough. It had been a few months since that day in the park, and the world felt different now. The air felt lighter. The weight that had burdened me for so long now lifted. even if only slightly. Robert and I were slowly rebuilding our relationship, one conversation at a time. I could see the effort he was putting in, and I appreciated it. But I had learned something important along the way. I didn't need to wait for anyone else to make me feel whole. I had already found that peace within myself. I had learned to stand on my own, to walk through life with my head held high, no longer defined by the expectations of others. The more I spent time with Robert, the more I realized how far we had drifted apart. But there was still hope. We still had time. I started visiting Emma more often, too. It was strange at first, trying to navigate the changes in our relationship after everything that had happened, but we found our way. I didn't need to be a part of everything she did, and neither did she. We were learning how to respect each other's space while still being there when it mattered most. I thought about the past often, especially those years when I had given everything to my family without ever asking for anything in return. I had always believed that love and sacrifice were enough, but I now knew that love didn't mean losing yourself. Sacrifice didn't mean giving up your own happiness for the sake of others. I realized that I had spent too much time focusing on what others needed from me and not enough time thinking about what I needed for myself. I had lost myself in my role as a mother, a grandmother, a wife. I had let my identity become defined by their needs. But now, I was finding who I really was. Margaret, a woman with her own dreams, her own desires, her own life. I wasn't just someone's mother or someone's grandmother. I was me, and that was enough. I stood in front of the mirror one morning, just taking in the reflection. The lines on my face were not just signs of age. They were the lines of a woman who had lived, who had loved deeply, who had felt pain but had come out stronger. I wasn't perfect. None of us were. But I was proud of who I had become. I was proud of the strength I had discovered in myself. I no longer sought approval from anyone. I had stopped waiting for the apology that I thought I needed to feel better. I didn't need anyone else to validate my worth. I had learned to do that for myself. I walked into the kitchen that day, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. The world outside was still chaotic, still unpredictable, but I knew one thing for sure. I could handle it. I had been through so much, but I had come out the other side stronger, more self-aware, and more confident. The future was uncertain, but I was ready for whatever it held. I wasn't just existing anymore. I was living. And for the first time in years, I felt free.